Savi, you have a very interesting persona on LinkedIn. And as I was kind of looking at your post that would pop up in my feed, I immediately thought like, oh, she is definitely an ENTJ. I always try to type people just the way they talk, the way they come across, because you're very like, you come across as direct, sort of like, this is how it is. I'm sorry to have to say it. And I was like, that is an interesting person because one of the things that I liked about what you were saying, and these are the type of people I have on my show, is people that go almost against the narrative that's like really prevalent and like everyone's going to tell you this. I'm here to tell you this, and this works. And you have a very like is an interesting presentation and good quick editing, things like that. So I was like ENTJ, and then when I was talking to you, you're like, Joe, that's like a persona I put on. Like, honestly, I'm actually an INTJ. I've dealt with this my whole life. It's been something where I have had to basically put on a charade and a mask. Like, and I've said the same thing, like, I'm actually not extroverted. So, given that we've come to the conclusion that you're an INTJ female, and which is exceedingly rare, and that's something the audience needs to know is that like there are certain types that just happen to be more rare by sex, and an INTJ female is exceedingly rare, and no one knows why. It just tends to be that thinking feeling is less prevalent in women. It's just, I don't know if that's nature nurture. Science might still be out on that, but what I want to know from you is, in your career to where you are as a coach now, the high level, high performance coach, really, how has being an INTJ helped and hindered you?
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me, and I'm very happy to be on your show and talk more about this. And I'll say I want to add a comment though to what you said. So it's not a charade, it's not a persona. It's just that I realized and I recognized that when I was coming up in my career that the people who were the most they did well, right? They were the most liked, they got the most opportunities, people were really they gravitated towards them were the people that had this very outgoing personality. And so today, even you, I think I fooled you, right? You thought
Yeah.
I was an ENTJ.
Yes.
And I am not. In every test that I've ever taken, I am off the charts introvert because that's who I am. But I really studied people. I studied success. I made that a part of how I worked. And I mirrored it. I mirrored all the most successful people that I came across. And so I learned how to put on, not only just physically, like how I carry myself, but
Hmm.
also the way I speak and I present. But I'm very much exhausted after I do all of this, and I require a ton of charging time. So
Okay.
that's, I'm worse than an electric car. It's like, oh my God, I'm just so exhausted
Okay.
after I have these interactions. So I schedule a lot of breaks. But that being said, so back to your question, how has it helped me? Well, I think for INTJ, for me specifically, I have a very high drive. I certainly rival. I think men and women have high drives. It's typically known for men having high drives, but I have pretty much outperformed anyone when it comes to drive in my career. And I think the reason is because my persona, when I lock on to a target, I just simply don't put it down. And I am very ruthless in going after what I want. Not maybe that was a bad
It's
choice
a
of
great
word.
word.
Well, yeah, it's very much like, I think I'll just go back to the analogy. It's like once I lock on to a target, I just don't let go.
Hmm.
I won't release it, and I will do everything that I possibly can to be successful. And I often am, and I'm very proud of that. And my bosses have all loved it, and companies have loved it, and I'm proud of myself as well. But the shadow side of that, right? So all great things in that frame have a shadow side. I mean, there's a shadow side to everything,
Yeah.
but having too much, let's say, go-getterness, right? It definitely can deter some people, right? It intimidates some people when that's certainly not your intent, right? So if you're trying to get something done and you're super focused on getting a piece of information or solving a piece of the puzzle that you know is pretty crucial, and you're really going after it, some people can feel pretty threatened by it.
Hmm.
That's something that I had to learn, that I was inadvertently doing, that people, like, I was actually putting people off based upon my drive. And another thing that I was doing was that I had such tunnel vision that I didn't recognize that some of the ways that I was behaving, this like uber focused drive, was actually hurting some of my
Yep.
relationships at work. And it wasn't until, like, in situations where I sought out feedback, or, I heard like rumors around the water cooler, because nobody actually is going to come to you and say, hey, the things that you're doing, they're hurting my feelings, or they make me feel like you don't value me, or, whatever. Nobody's going to say that. And then on top of that, if you're considered a top performer at your company, it makes it even worse, because then you have a reputation of doing really well. When you do really well, you're really visible to senior executives, and they talk to each other about you when you do really well. And then that, inadvertently, it always goes back to the team. So they're like, oh, I don't want to be the person that's saying, X, Y, and Z for her to stop. So it really kind of creates this vicious cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And it can actually be pretty self-isolating, like not knowing that you're actually isolating other people, isolating yourself. So it's kind of weird. It has this weird backlash to it. But it was really something that I had to focus on, something that I had to work on, and something I had to seek out feedback. Like, I'm a very intuitive person.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's the I in the yoga.
IN,
That's
yeah.
yeah. So I'm very intuitive. So I can sense when I have a very, very sensitive sensor of when people's emotions change around me. I can literally feel the energy shift. So I'm very in tune with that, and I will seek out things like that. Whereas I think that if you're not as in tune, or if you don't seek out the information and you don't make people comfortable enough where they'll actually open up to you, you can continue, behaving this way, and really just kind of hurting yourself. But that's the shadow side of it. But otherwise, I mean, I love my personality. I think it's the best one.
Of course. Yeah. And I think all types should think that their personality is great and lean into it and like embrace the good and bad side. And that's why there's the first thing you say, there's no bad type. It's just some types have different qualities that are suited more towards like a corporate executive role, and others towards owning their own business or something like that. Now, this is an interesting topic because, and I knew that you would be a good person to answer it because of the way that you can be some maybe contrarian, but there is a growing trend within this, like the female empowerment movement within, especially in like executives and appointed people on the board and stuff like that, where it's about trying to get a seat at the table. Like all about, we need more women to get a seat at the table. Can you tell us what this is about? I know this is like a hot topic for you.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you asked this question. So I am definitely all for more women and, female empowerment, women being empowered, women having more senior roles and taking charge and leading things. But I personally have an issue with this statement, seat at the table, because for me, the way that it makes me feel is that I, as a woman, am somehow special and I need extra help getting there because I'm not qualified enough to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find it a little bit irritating, the saying. I understand what they're trying to say, and I understand what they're trying to do. They're saying, hey, more women should be at the table. But the things that I think about is like, well, traditionally, from whenever this started, women were never expected, or that wasn't their place in the world. So I think that carried along, and now we're trying to fix it. But I don't think the way to fix it is by just randomly giving people opportunities that may not be ready for. And I want to make sure that companies are putting women in positions when they're ready for it. Like every layer, and I've gone through it myself, right?
Yeah.
I've been a director, I've been a VP. And when I look back at the person who I was before I took over those roles, number one, I was like ready for them. Like I didn't check all the boxes for the role, right? I don't think it's possible to check all the boxes for a role, but you have to have a good enough track record where your bosses and other leaders can feel really good giving you the opportunity to step into those roles. And so my concern is, are companies so desperate to jump on the bandwagon of saying like, hey, we're promoting more women, but people may not be getting the right coaching and the right support. And for me, that could actually hurt women, right?
Yeah.
They could say, oh, look, we gave all these women, all these chances and they didn't do as good a job. And so then it comes back. And that's not what I want, right? There's so many qualified women out there that have the raw material to do these big jobs. I just want to make sure that they're supported, but also I want to make sure that they're getting there from a place of power, not from a place of, oh my God, I'm a woman, give me a spot, give it to me. That kind of way. Like it's really just not, it's the opposite of what they're trying to do. It's not you stepping into your power going, I'm a total badass. I have the track record. I can totally do this. I look at what I've done, right? I am ready to take this over.
Right.
Versus quota. So this is my personal issue with this seat at the table. Again, the premise of what they're trying to do is great.
Fine. Yeah.
But the optics of it makes me wonder.
Okay. Now this leads me to one of the questions I wanted to ask, which is, and I ask a lot of coaches this, which is, what is your ideal client? And then I'm wondering, like, when you're doing your coaching, do you get a lot of women or trying to be executives, like you're trying to get them to the next level, or like, but in a way that's like you're saying, make sure you're ready, not like trying to find a way that they can position, but to get that spot without being ready. Do you have clients like that? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked this question. The interesting thing is that I have more male clients than female clients.
Okay.
Even if people are just reaching out to me, I have more men reaching out to me than women. And what I've noticed is that there is a different trend, right? So trend that I see is that when men come to me, they're more like, this is where I want to go. Tell me how to do it.
Okay.
There is absolutely no doubt in their mind that they want to get to wherever they want to go to, whether it's they want to be an executive, whether they want to be a CEO. They are very clear on where they want to go, and they ask no questions. It's just like, I don't need to ask anybody anything. This is what I want. Like, they're very, very directed. Women that have come to me, they're more like meek, or they're more confused, or they feel very inadequate, sometimes even embarrassed to ask for what they really want. So they're qualified, right? They're super qualified, but they don't feel that they sort of deserve it. Where the other thing with men is that they know, they're like, I deserve it. This is what I want. In fact, deserving it is not even something that's on the menu, right? They don't care. They don't care. They're like, this is where I want to go. I've tried a few things. I've wasted a few years, and I haven't ended up there. And I look at your track record, and you've done, tremendous things. So how did you do it? Just tell me how to do it.
I love that. Okay. That is funny. Yeah. The first thing I thought when you said more men, I'm like, in my head, it doesn't connect with like executive males reaching out to females to help them. That doesn't match the dichotomy in my head, but that is so funny. So like, what is your track record with helping both types?
Yeah, so I want to answer that question, but I want to go back. Why is that weird in your head that men reach out to women?
Well, because of the way that when I coach, I feel like most of the people that I coach are females. So maybe I was just like, oh, it wouldn't go the opposite way. That would be insane, right, Joe? And now I'm like, well, maybe it actually would. It's funny because as I've started this business, I've only hired female coaches. You know what? I'm kind of just putting my foot in my mouth right now.
Traditionally, it's just the way it is. It's more men than women. And men tend to go after things more than women, and they're known for pursuing things more than women. They don't even think about whether they're qualified or not. They're like, I want it and I'm going for it, which is a very male trait. It's not a typical female trait. I actually lean more to the male side in that thinking, where it's like, I don't really care about all of the other things that anybody else is saying. If I want to go get it, I'm just going to go get it. It doesn't really matter to me what I have to jump over. Most people don't think like that. So I guess for me, like it's not as surprising. I really do wish more women reached out, because I want to see so many more women in top leadership positions, but I think things are getting better.
Okay.
Yeah. So to your question, like, what is the track record? The track record is good for both. I think it's because that, for women, number one, I am a woman, and I've gone through a lot of very deep, intense, emotional things, from, growing up in an abusive house and not having like great parents to take care of me, to, having a disastrous divorce, just before I was 30. Like, I've been through a lot of emotional trauma, and I've had to overcome a lot of things. So I definitely can very feel that female energy. For the male side, like, I'm very power driven, right? I'm an INTJ, right? So very, very power driven. And so I understand the power, the charge that comes with masculinity. And I think my personal energy is neutral. I may even swing a little bit more masculine in my energy. And I know there's a lot of talk about like, be more feminine, this, whatever. It's like, I don't, that's fine. That's nice, but that's not who I am. Like, what you see right now is the way I am.
Right.
This is just the way I talk. This is just the way I operate. And I easily work with men and women. And, one of my, I have, all my clients love me, but I have one client in particular that really loves me. That's a guy, and he's experiencing some tremendous strides right now in his organization. And it's just really impressive what's happening to him.
Now you talk about that energy and, the contrarian nature of yourself on LinkedIn. Now I would like to know, like, okay, do you purposely position yourself as a contrarian just because that's the way you think, or do you think like, oh, I got to break away from like what everyone else is saying? But my first part of this question is, do you purposely post contrarian stuff? And then secondly, do you ever get pushback from it?
When you say like, do you do it on purpose? What I'm hearing is like, is this sort of manufactured to stand out from the crowd, or do you actually mean it? I mean, manufactured is not a bad way of looking at it, right? It's not a bad way of saying like, are you doing this for marketing purposes, or do you actually believe these things? And for me, I actually believe these things because I've actually lived it, and that's what made me successful. So when you think about the things that make people successful, it's very often not following the crowd, not doing what everyone else is doing, right? That's herd mentality, right? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But specifically when it comes to getting promoted, moving up in your career, making more money, you don't become a standout person. You don't become a star by doing what everybody else is doing. By definition, you can't, right? It's just like the post that I made today about, does your boss think that you add value? So many people think that just by showing up to work, that's adding value. It's absolutely not, right? It's the minimum that you can do in order to keep getting paid and not getting fired. Like, no one's ever going to promote you because you're like, oh, I showed up to work today. Isn't that awesome? It's like, your boss doesn't care. Like, they probably won't say it the way I said it, but I literally said it. Your boss doesn't care that you did your job. Congratulations, you did your job. You get to keep your job. You get to make money. But if you're someone that really wants to take your life and your career to the next level, and you want to have a career that is like written about in books, and you want to say that you accomplished a lot of things and you experienced a lot of things, and you got the titles and you got to work on some amazing projects with some amazing people, then you've got to do things differently. You got to show that you're different, and that requires risk. It takes a little bit of guts, and it takes a lot of belief in yourself. Notice none of those things I said actually had to do with your ability to do your job.
Right.
Because everybody knows that you can already do your job, right? You've got the you got the role because everybody knew you could do your job. But if you want to be more than that, you've got to show that you're more than that. And I think the interesting thing is that, when you read a bunch of studies, like I've read several articles, right? And I've seen numbers anywhere from 83% to 92%, right? That percentage of employees that quit, they quit because they feel underappreciated, undervalued, they feel invisible, like nobody sees them. And so they quit their company to go to another company because they think they're going to be valued and seen. Now, when I made that post about that in particular, several people wrote me and said, hey, if you really want to get a pay increase, the best way is to quit your job and move on. And to some degrees, that is true because some companies will pay you multiple times more than your current role, right? Especially big tech companies, they can stomach those kind of changes. But if you're quitting your job just because you want to feel seen somewhere else, it's like you're chasing a ghost, because the only way that you can ever be seen is by actually making yourself stand out, is by showing that you add value. You've got to do that before you get. You've got to give before you get. And a lot of people are looking for bosses and companies to kind of parent them and be like, oh, you did such a good job. Oh, let me give you another cookie. Oh, let me give you another something else. Like, that's just not the way that it works. So they end up in this cycle of being unhappy their entire careers, or a large portion of their careers, where they give up. So that's a long way of saying that, no, the personality that you see on LinkedIn is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that I believe. These are things that I have done and I have executed on. And these are the things that I teach people in my boot camp, and they're getting results from it. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I think that anything that we don't get to experience or do or achieve in our life, it's nobody's fault. It's your own fault, right? It's my own fault when I don't get the thing that I want. Like, I don't blame my parents. I don't blame my bad upbringing. I don't blame the things that I didn't have. I don't blame my parents for not being conscious enough to know that they were being not great people. Like, those are things that I have no control over, and I'm not going to let the end result of someone else affect the life that I want to have. But you have to build this mentality, and it takes work. But this is my conviction. This is how I operate today. This is how I breathe today. Any of my closest friends can tell you that this is how I've always been. And it's like, once I zoned into my power, once I really focused and I really admitted like what I wanted and who I was going to be, and I just stopped listening to all of that other stuff and I went for it, and I just didn't care like what was going to happen. And I'm telling you, like, it's only worked out.
I hope people are listening that are really inspired by this. And that kind of leads into what I want you to say is, people that are like, okay, Savi, I'm booking her. How do they do it? What's the easiest way?
Yeah. So the easiest way to get in touch with me is to either just DM me on LinkedIn or to use the booking link that's in my profile. That is the best way to do a 20-minute intro call with me and to learn if you qualify for the boot camp.
Awesome. And when I post this on YouTube, I'll put all the links to find you, so people, if they see it, they can find you wherever. Anything else you want to say to the audience before I let you go?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to say to the audience, especially around the MBTI types and personality tests. So what I'll say is that take personality tests, understand what your type is, but no matter what the answer, that does not determine your future. That does not determine your fate. Like, if you're not an ENTJ, INTJ, it doesn't really matter, right? It just shows you what your strengths are, and it shows you the areas that you may need to work a little harder on. But use it as a guide for your life, right? Don't let it shape your decision one way or the other. I would use it as a tool.
Yes.
And combine it with your heart and the direction that you want to go in. And then you use your brain to figure out how to fill out those spots. So that's what I would say.
What a great way to end the show. Well, Savi, I am just so glad you ended with that, so I don't have to say anything else. So appreciate you coming on. I love what you do. I hope people book you after this. And like, I'm really inspired by that. Like, she is getting after it, and I'd like her to help me. So Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much, Joe.
I tried to live without you.